Well, good evening. It's good to have you here. This afternoon, I was at Walmart, of all places, and scurrying about. It was between a couple meetings here, and I knew I had just like a block of time I could run to Walmart. And I'm running around, and there's a couple guys at Walmart. And it's like, oh, that's cool, a couple Maranatha guys. And I'm not going to reveal their names. One was married, one was not. And they were running, there's your clue, running around Walmart. Anyways, okay, so I'll let you just figure it out from there. And I'm in oblivion. I'm getting ready. We're heading out on medical tour tomorrow and getting a few things, picking up a few things. And I'm checking out, and they walk by, and with this kind of sheepish grin on their face, there's flowers in the one guy's hand, not the married one. Anyways, it didn't even, it's like, yeah, and I'm checking out, buying my socks, buying my deodorant, buying my trail mix. It's like, oh, that's cool. I wonder what's going on. Anyway, so it dawned on me, a little time later, oh, that's what's going on. So whatever girl is here tonight that's got those flowers, I hope you like them. Anyways, that's great. Sweetheart, I must apologize then. We can hold hands in the omega-3 trail mix. Is that? There we go. Well, I trust that your evening will be much better than my afternoon. And I've been rebuked by a single guy who has nicer flowers than I have for my wife. Isn't that something? I know that it'll be a delightful evening this evening. It's a joy to have you folks, those of you that are visiting with us. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know that the concert this evening will just be a rich blessing. Aren't you glad that God made things beautiful? So even music is beautiful and something that we can sit back and enjoy, even think of the character of God in music, and I know that we'll enjoy that tonight. For the musicians that are here, I'm certain that at least some of us will be sitting and listening to all the things that are happening technically, and it'll be a joy and delight. But I hope that you don't get so wrapped up in that you just don't enjoy the beauty of what God has made, even in the sound of music. And I trust that that'll be a blessing tonight. We'll have a word of prayer, and then I'll have Dr. Bachorik come and introduce our guest artist this evening. Let's pray. Father, it is with joy that we gather this evening. I know that it's a wonderful evening for many of the young people here tonight. Lord, let me just be honest and open. As they have a date tonight, would you direct their steps? May they do your will. And if you would provide for them, even in the date, a future mate, then we rejoice in that. Lord, I pray that our hearts would just be encouraged this evening. It'll be a moment to break away from the routines of life, hear something that's beautiful, that reflects the character of God. And may we come away this evening refreshed, enjoying a moment of recreation, and get back to the life that you've called us to live more faithfully. Lord, there may be one here this evening that doesn't know you as their Savior. We would be delighted to tell them about having their soul made new, a new birth. May they catch one of us this evening. So bless in everything that's said and done tonight. May we rejoice in who you are as it's expressed even through the beauty of music. It's in your precious name we pray. Amen. Dr. Bachorik.
It's a pleasure to introduce our artists this evening. I have a personal connection with both of them, actually. One of them a little more closely than the other. But Bethany Thompson came to the Philippines when we were there in our Bible college ministry, and the Lord gave us 4 wonderful years of ministering together and making music together. She and her sister started the string program as a part of that college ministry and just had a wonderful time. And for us, it was a great joy to watch her throw herself so fully into whatever it was there was to do in terms of music, in terms of ministry, in anything in the life and work there. It was just a great pleasure. And we've had wonderful friendship and fellowship for many years. And I'm so glad that she could be here and be a part of the Maranatha family tonight. The accompanist this evening, of course, is my favorite accompanist of all time, Ruth Bachorik, and she has been my favorite pianist for about 35 years now. One of the things I love about both of these women and their approach to music is whether they're playing Bach or Haydn, Handel, Dvorak, Barber, or they're playing a wonderful arrangement of How Great Thou Art. They bring to it a commitment to excellence, to beauty, and ultimately to glorify the Lord in whatever context that they play. And I know that you'll hear that this evening as they play. So I hope you give them a wonderful welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bachorik. It's so great to be here with all of you here at Artist Series. I'm thrilled to be here. And this program is partitioned off in two halves. The first half is just cello by itself. And the second half is when I get to collaborate with Mrs. Bachorik. So when thinking about the music in this program, I was very much thinking of how you would think of a faceted gem or a kaleidoscope. When you know when you turn it and the patterns rearrange and different colors come out and you think, wow, didn't see that coming. That's what I wanted to explore this evening with you with this music for the cello. There's all kinds of different genres, different sounds, and I hope you'll just enjoy the sound of the instrument and what it can do. When I was a kid, I heard the instrument and I was smitten because of the sound. So I hope you enjoy this exploration of music with me. This first piece was written about 300 years ago. Between 1717 and 1720, Johann Sebastian Bach wrote a lot of music for solo cello called the Six Suites for Solo Cello. What these were a collection of dances. And the particular dance I'm going to play for you is a gigue. And if you're thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like a jig, you're right. Jigs originated in England, Scotland, and Ireland before they made their way to the French court of Louis XIV. And there they were called jigs. So here's a jig. It's very wholehearted, cheerful, and energetic. Thank you. This next piece, in contrast, is by a Russian composer named Prokofiev. And Prokofiev was, he died in the mid-1950s, and he wrote this particular piece for 4 hands on a piano. Okay, so it's originally for piano. And it was called Music for Children. So they were short little movements for the pianist, and each had a very distinct character or quality. This one is called March. And along came a Russian cellist, a contemporary of Prokofiev, named Gregor Piatigorsky, and he transcribed that piece for piano for the cello. And this particular piece, as I mentioned, it is a march. It very much sounds like a parade coming in the distance. You hear it getting closer and closer, and then it's upon you, and then it marches away. So here is March. Well, thank you. This next piece is written by a living composer. This is another dance. This particular dance originated from the French Corrente, and it was called, everyone had their own take on it, you know. The Italians called it the Corrente. A couple years ago, when I was finishing up my doctorate, I was on one of my last graduate recitals, and I wanted a very specific type of piece. And I just happened to be living with a composer. How perfect is that? It was actually the Bachorik's daughter. She was going to school for composition, getting her master's. So I said to her, hey, could you write this type of dance for me? And I love this piece because it has this wonderful, this feel of a dance, but it's kind of modernized in the sense of it's a little bit asymmetric. So you just feel like you're getting into the patterns and then they shift. And it kind of has a surprise ending too. So here is Corrente by Alicia Bachorik-Armstrong. Thank you. This next set of pieces, and this is the only multi-movement piece of the program, so I'll be playing with brief pauses just between these little 4 movements. This is 4 pieces by Gregor Piatigorsky. I mentioned him earlier in the program. He was born 1903. He was a Russian cellist. He started taking the cello when he was 7 years old, but unfortunately his father was less than reliable, and a couple years later, Piatigorsky, at the age of 10 or something, was supporting his family by playing his cello in all kinds of places. So he put money on the table and took care of them from the time he was 10. He just kind of skyrocketed. When he was 15, he had some of the greatest positions in Russia and the most prestigious orchestras and quartets. But when he was 18, he wasn't happy with the political situation in Russia, and he actually escaped across the border into Poland. Now, Piatigorsky was known as a great storyteller. You know, the type that don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So the way he tells his crossing over into Poland, there are so many different variations, but the best one is he's swimming a river with the cello on his head and bullets whizzing from both sides of the river, but he makes it. Obviously, we have this piece, right? So he found his way across Europe and eventually into the United States, and he was a very beloved teacher in California until his death. These pieces are really varied, and they were encore pieces for him. They were just things he kind of made up as he did his concert tours. The very first one, Preludium, I think it's best to think of it as kind of a soundscape for cello. He's like, oh, what sounds can the cello make? And he kind of weaves this very dramatic little piece out of that. The next piece is Strings, and this has to do with panpipes and the forest nymphs, so it feels very much mysterious and a little bit magical. And you know when you're using panpipes, you only have certain notes, so it has a very different sound world. The third one taps into his Jewish roots. It's prayer, and you can very much hear a cantor in a synagogue throughout this, and a lot of angst and loss. And the final one, A Stroll, actually was a very humorous, kind of tongue-in-cheek creative impulse of Piatigorsky. As I mentioned earlier, Prokofiev was one of his contemporaries, and also the composer Shostakovich. Unfortunately, Shostakovich and Prokofiev Thank you. Well, next we're going to go to Croatia. This piece is by a Croatian cellist named Rudolf Matz. He was a rising, influential cultural leader in Yugoslavia then, before the communists came and the Iron Curtain came down. After that, a lot of cultural treasures, a lot of music, literature began to disappear. And one of Matz's students was very concerned that that is what was going to happen to Matz's music. So this student, with Matz's permission, took Matz's papers, music, compositions, put them in suitcases, and flew them to Canada. When he got to Canada, he drove them down to North Carolina, to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where they are housed to this day in the cello archive there. And this particular piece is from a suite. You're going to recognize that from the Bach mention. It's called Lights and Shadows. This is a different type of piece, though, because up until this point, I've primarily been making sound with my bow. And this piece is entirely pizzicato, or plucked. And Matz obviously was having an uninspired day. He wrote a great piece, but he couldn't think of anything better to name it but pizzicato, which just means plucking. Thank you. Well, this next piece takes us to Norway. This piece is by a Norwegian viola player. He worked in the Oslo Philharmonic for about 20 years before he's on to other things now. He's still a working musician, a wonderful musician, very creative. And the music he writes is what he calls the new romantic. So it's very lyrical and lush and very beautiful. This particular piece is very programmatic. In other words, the music kind of walks us through telling a story. And in this story, he said that it was the end of a long day. He had 3 small children, and they were having lots of fun, but he called them in, time to go to bed, and he started singing them lullabies. And then the music changes a bit, and he said as he sang, he began to have worries about their future, concerns, but those worries dissipated, and the children fell asleep, and he tiptoed out of the room. And the emotion that captured all that for him was gratitude, which is the title of this piece. Thank you. This next piece is called 100 Pipers. And in it, the cello kind of mimics a instrument called the bagpipe. But I don't think it mimics 100 of them, maybe just one. This particular piece is actually a jig. It's a very old jig. And it actually was popularized during one of the Jacobite risings. As you know, Scotland, Ireland, there's been a lot of tumult in their history. And if you know the song Danny Boy, there's that line that says, the pipes are calling. And bagpipes were often used to rally people to causes for insurrections and revolts and such. And this particular piece was actually used in this, which is remarkable because it's very cheerful. So this piece, like I said, the cello is kind of mimicking bagpipe, along with the trademark sound of a bagpipe, which includes a drone, right, which is a sustained note underneath the melody. Right? So if you've ever, we've all heard bagpipes probably. You're very familiar with that sound. So here is the 100 Pipers. Thank you. Well, the last piece of this half is inspired by another dance. This piece is by the principal cellist of the New York Philharmonic, Carter Bray, and he's been with the orchestra a long time. And once when they took a trip to Argentina, an orchestra tour to Argentina, he was very inspired by the music of Argentina and also by the music of Piazzolla. And he decided to write a piece for cello based on kind of the quintessential dance of Argentina, the tango. The tango originated between Uruguay and Argentina and was very much associated with those regions, but now we enjoy it all over. So this section is in ABA form, or like I like to say, a ham sandwich. So you have the outer section, which is very rhythmic and driven and energetic. That's the bread. Then you get to the middle section, and it's very passionate and free, and that's the ham. And then you get back to the bread, and that's tango. Well, for the second half, we're going to start off with a piece by a cellist named Sharon Molfinger-Gerber. And this particular piece comes from actually a collection of pieces that were recorded on CDs called Ein kleiner Kaffeemusik, a little coffee music. Some of you have probably listened to them. And I love that in the midst of all the coffee, they included some tea. So this is, because I'm a tea drinker, so this particular piece is called Earl Grey. And when I listen to it, I definitely think of the morning, the sun coming in the window as you drink your tea or coffee, and just kind of the beauty of that moment. So here is Earl Grey by Sharon Gerber. Well, thank you. This next piece is by the Czechoslovakian composer Dvorak. And this piece was originally written for four hands on the piano. And it was called From the Bohemian Forest, because Czechoslovakia used to be called Bohemia. And it's a musical sketch of a certain region in Bohemia where there's forests and just a wonderful place to be outside and hike. And Dvorak went on tour a couple years after he wrote this particular piece. It was a 5 or 6 movement suite. And he was traveling with a cellist. So he thought, hey, I'll transcribe the fifth movement for cello and piano. So this version is actually something that Dvorak did from his original, which was just piano. And then later, this movement proved so popular that he actually orchestrated the piano part. This piece in Czechoslovakian was called Klid, which means peace or stillness. But he always had wranglings with his publisher over titles, so the publisher had it renamed Silent Woods. Either way, it definitely evokes being outside, this sense of beauty, and I've even heard it described as evoking stillness through musical motion, which sounds paradoxical, but it just is a very beautiful, beautiful piece. So this is Silent Woods. Well, thank you. This next piece we're going to play is kind of special for us because the last time I played with Mrs. Bachorik was 12 years ago when I was living in the Philippines and she was there. And during the time I was there, we played a lot of concerts together, and we often included this type of music, which is from a traditional Filipino love song genre called kundiman. And this particular piece is called, well, you see it in the program, Ang Tangi Kong Pag-Ibig, or My Only Love. It's a very dramatic text, but a very delightful song. So we wanted to share with you this Filipino love song. Well, next, in vivid contrast to the Philippines, we're going to head to the Opera House. And before some of you head for the exits, I'm going to promise you, this is the shortest opera summary you've ever heard. It's like Cliff Notes. So this particular piece is called A Fantasy. It's written by a Dutch cellist, Franco Mendes. He wrote lots of these kind of fantasies, which are like almost like variations on themes and kind of pieces to display the instrument. He would play them kind of like encores. It's kind of like, I really can't think of a good equivalent today, but it's kind of like me playing an encore of like variations on Frozen, you know, and everyone's like, I know that theme, right? Because people knew opera tunes at that time, right? So the material for this particular fantasy is taken from Donizetti's opera Lucia di Lammermoor. Now, this particular libretto, or the text of the opera, is actually based on a novel by Sir Walter Scott called The Bride of Lammermoor. And basically, it's like Romeo and Juliet. There's a family and another family, and they hate each other. And of course, the one family has a man, and the other family has a woman, and of course, they love each other. And the woman's family is like on the brink of financial disaster, so they're trying to force her to marry this rich guy, and she's definitely not allowed to see that guy, who's like the enemy. And so they convince her he's false, and all this tragic stuff, and you know, it ends very tragically. So that's the opera. But musically, operas are, the stories are usually the weak side of operas, to say the least. But basically, throughout this rather short piece, it's very sectional. You'll hear like very clear things happening. In the beginning, it's like the curtain's down. You hear the overture from the orchestra in the pit, right? They're excited about something, but you're not sure what. And then the curtain comes up, and the first character walks on. And it's very clear this character, he has his own thing going on. And there's about 5 or 6 of those kind of sections that change very dramatically. And then the curtain goes down, and you just experience the shortest opera of your life. You're welcome. So here is Fantasy on Lucia di Lammermoor. Thank you. Well, this next set is two, I hope, I think you'll know them. One you'll definitely know. We're going to play two songs from Broadway shows from the 1950s and 60s. The first is from My Fair Lady, which, as you know, tells the story of a rather arrogant professor who places a bet with his colleagues that he can turn a Cockney flower girl, and pass her off as a grand something in grand society in a certain amount of time. And, of course, the chaos that ensues. So we're going to play On the Street Where You Live, and then we're going to play The Sound of Music. And I know you're hearing a lot of The Sound of Music here on campus, which is very exciting with your show coming up. So here are those two songs. Thank you. Well, in the second to last piece, we're going to be playing a piece by the English composer Edward Elgar. It was written in 1888, and it was actually written for the woman who became his wife. It's called Salute d'Amour, or Love's Greeting. Caroline, his future wife, was originally his piano student, and things developed from there. So here is Salute d'Amour. Thank you. Thank you. You've been such a lovely audience. It's been so much fun to explore this music with you this evening, so thank you. This last piece is one of my favorite fiddle tunes. It is an American fiddle tune folk song called Bile Them Cabbage Down. And interestingly enough, this one actually has words, apparently. Not going to sing them for you. In the chorus, it actually talks about making cabbage soup and hoe cakes, which were cornbread batter put on the blade of a hoe and roasted over an open fire. And according to this fiddle tune, if you were having cabbage soup and hoe cakes, you were living the great Appalachian life. So here is Bile Them Cabbage Down.
Well, thank you so much for coming. On behalf of the university, we want to thank our artists, and they will be at the back of the gym after in just a couple minutes, so you can greet them back there. There are also offering bags back there if you'd like to help Maranatha continue to produce programs like this. We'd appreciate your help with that. And if you're going skating tonight, have fun and don't break anything important. Have a good night.